Squeezes on. The bunt is down. The run scores. And Dibble throws the ball away. Descenso to second. It almost looked like Dibble was throwing the ball at Descenso. And Joe West has thrown Dibble out of the game. Wow. Well, this is certainly something the Reds don't need, but it did appear that Dibble was throwing the ball at Descenso. Joe West apparently thought so and threw him out of the game.
Well, unfortunately for the Reds, Steve, he's out of here. He's pleading his case, but it's too late.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. It's time to remember this crap with Mike Donahue. But before we get started with Mike, as always, the Pointless Exercise Podcast is presented by Manscaped. Support for the Pointless Exercise Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code REMEMBER20 at manscaped.com. Once again, get 20% off and free shipping with the code REMEMBER20 at manscaped.com. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. So, Mike, how are you doing?
Good, Andy. Wondering if we might end up spinning the wheel on a season tonight in which a Cub got caught in a rundown between home and first.
I don't know. So we are recording this on the day that Javi Baez pulled off one of the most ridiculous plays in baseball history
You'll ever see.
And gave away in the post-game interview with Boog and JD that he didn't know the rule. He's running to first base, and an inexperienced first baseman who I thought was Alan Craig, but apparently it's not. Actually, when I saw the guy the other night, and I just saw Craig, I'm like, God, is Alan Craig back in the big leagues? It's not. It's his twin brother, younger twin brother. Was it Will? Is that his name?
Will Craig. A name that will live in infamy.
So the runner at second, 2 outs, ground ball to third.
Routine.
Throws a little bit offline, not that bad. Will comes off the bag, grabs it, and decides, it's pulled him towards home plate a little bit. Just going to tag Javi out.
Well, Javi stops. Normally guys just sort of run through and run into the tag.
Javi stops and starts running backwards.
Well, but you forgot, not before pulling some sort of his Jedi mind trick or something, and that something happened there or something that was only Javi can do.
Well,
but
the thing Javi did so well was he didn't just like run away from him. He stayed like a big brother with when a little brother would get mad at the big brother and start swinging, and the big brother could just move back far enough so the little brother's fist could never actually contact him.
Go ahead, tag me.
But it would encourage him to continue swinging. That's what Javi was doing. And so Craig, like a moron, just started following him down the baseline. All he's got to do once Javi starts to back up is just turn around, jog in the bag, step on the base, the inning's over. But he chases him. And then Wilson deserves a lot of credit because he just starts running. He's at second base. He's not a third. And he sees some weird crap's going on. He just decides, screw it. I'm just going to score.
There were 2 outs. Wilson was running hard between second and third. You'll see he was like touching the bag when the third baseman threw the ball. He just figured probably rounded third and maybe came to a walk and then, might as well keep going.
So Javi and Wilson arrive at the plate at just about the same time. And Wilson slides in just ahead of the. So the key moment for Will Craig is at some point he panicked and lobbed the ball to the catcher.
Not even just loud. I just want to say this is my favorite part of this play, only because Andy, I have a 10-year-old son, and I manage his little league team, the Mustang League, a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds. And one of the things that you really try to coach kids out of, and it happens still about once a game, is where like a kid will get a ball, he'll start running to the bag and then decide to throw overhand, which is often, especially for 10-year-olds, it's almost always going to sail or hit the kid in the head. You get close. You shouldn't be in that position anyway. So I quite frankly, I kind of got a kick out of watching a major leaguer overhand a toss to a player that he was standing right next to.
Yeah. So
catcher caught it.
Catcher catches it and makes a quick tag, but Wilson beats it. He's safe.
Which means nothing at this point.
At this point, it's exercise. It's pointless. Exercise. That's all it is.
Would Javi's safe call also be pointless exercise?
So Javi starts signaling safe, he thinks the run scored, and he just stole one.
I forgot to finish my job.
And then he's like, well, and he says, well, I realized there was nobody at first, so I just started running. Even despite the fact that until he gets to first, the run can't count.
All of that hullabaloo would have been rendered inconsequential if Javi did not get to first.
Javi's running to first. There's no one covering first. The Pirates try to hit the second baseman in motion running towards the bag to make some. I don't know if he was supposed to tag Javi or touch the base or whatever. He misses the ball. Ball goes on to right field. Javi ends up at second. Scores a couple of pitches later on a blue pitch. So he effectively steals 2 runs with that.
And the difference in the
game. The Cubs win by 2.
They did win by 2. You're right. It was a 1-run game till late. The last flourish I'll add is, of course, when he slid into second, it was almost another overthrow. I mean, in case we haven't illustrated a Little League picture enough of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, and that was when Jim Deshaies said the great, keep running, you're invisible.
Jim was so fired up. It was so joyous to watch. It just reminds me how much I so quickly come back to the notion that they're trying to shove Ryan Dempster into that booth. I mean, Jim Deshaies is a damn treasure. And it's just the pure joy, and we were all feeling it. It was just amazing. It was nobody's ever seen that before. Real quick, I was at my dad's house for lunch. I went over there for lunch. I was working, and we had the game on, and I ran out to my car to get some. So this is honest to God, at the moment I walked in the house, this is not an exaggeration. I look at the TV and I see Javi running towards home. So as confused as everyone was who saw that play from the beginning, I walked in like, did I just walk into a dimension? Am I watching this game through a mirror? And then we DVR'd it, and then we were able to, it was hysterical. But that was my introduction to that play. I missed the actual beginning.
Did you think maybe he was reenacting Jimmy Pearsall's 100th home run? He's just going to run all the bases backwards.
Which again, because that was discussed on Twitter today, Jimmy Pearsall did not run the bases in a clockwise motion. That run would not have counted. He hit the home run off of the much discussed Dallas Green and proceeded to run to first, second, third home facing, backwards.
I didn't know that. I always thought he eschewed. I always thought he had to hit his 100th homer twice.
No,
because he ran around backwards, and so it would not have counted.
It would not have counted, and I don't know if he would have been called out. There's probably nothing in the rule book for that, because that's Jimmy Pearsall for you.
Well, could he have run it? He didn't do that. Could he have run it backwards, then gone the right way, and then it been a home run?
That's a good question. I don't think the rule book accounts for it. So I don't know if he'd be out, or it's like, all right, well, now you've had your fun. Now you can run in the right way if you want your team to score the run. Either way, you can imagine what a red ass that must have made Dallas Green standing in the middle of the diamond. But no, he ran backwards.
So let's say he ran it the wrong way, and the umpire threw him out. Now we know from a game we all saw that you get thrown out while the play is in. You're not out of the game until the play ends. Thanks to Yadier Molina getting thrown out of a game for arguing with an ump while the ball was in play.
Absolutely.
The ball got to him. He didn't make a play on it, but he could have tagged somebody out, and the guy would have been out. That's what caused the discussion.
Put out by an ejected player.
Because you're not ejected until the ball is put out of play.
Yep.
So I don't know. So I got to play official score on the internet because there was a lot of discussion about.
You nailed it.
About even our good friend T.J. Brown had it wrong at first, assuming that You
somehow
can't
there's
score.
confusion, distinction being made between a tag and a force, but as long as a force is still in effect, a tag has the same effect as a force.
You don't have to take the force. If that's the case, then anytime a first baseman has to come off the bag and save a play by tagging a runner out with a runner at third, there'd be the chance that runner at third with 2 outs could score, and that's never at risk. The batter has to successfully reach first for that run to count. And so we cleared that up.
Right.
So that brought to mind the year I was the official scorer for the Beloit Snappers of the Midwest League in 2003. We had a ridiculous play that happened. We had a lot of ridiculous plays, but one stands out. So the situation was the Snappers were batting. There were runners at first and third and 1 out. Batter hits a ball to relatively deep right field. The runner at third goes back and tags up. The player in right has to make a diving catch, but catches the ball. Runner at third tags up, comes in and scores. The runner at first thought he wasn't going to catch the ball and took off and rounded second on his way to third, realized he caught it, came back, did touch second base, so that wasn't part of the issue. Touched second, got tagged out between first and second to end the inning.
So we got doubled off.
Yes. The umpires signaled to us in the press box that the run did not count.
Really?
To which Don Money lost his shit. He was the manager of the Snappers. He came running out of the dugout. And we couldn't really hear the discussion, even though they were yelling quite loudly at each other.
And it's a small ballpark.
And it's a minor league park. They had a very long discussion. And Don ended up losing the argument. The run didn't count.
Now I want to know on what grounds, because I would have thought in this instance that the run would count.
Right. So we'll get to that. So Don has one of the players come up. You can walk up the stands. Has one of his players, I'm sure the player loved this, gets told to go up to tell us in the press box to put the run on the scoreboard. He goes, I don't care. We scored. Put the run on the scoreboard. We refused to do it. Like, nope. We can't. The ump did. It's not a run.
Did you understand the explanation of the rule at the time? Or
we were given no explanation other than the run didn't count. So the Snappers go on. They win the game. They went on and won. So in the way my job was, at the end of the day, I tallied up all this. Actually, the computer program tallied everything up. I printed off the box score, and I had to go first to the visiting clubhouse to see if that manager had anything he wanted to argue about, which typically was like a pass ball, wild pitcher, an error, which may have led to somebody not getting an RBI or getting an RBI or an earned run on a pitcher.
Is this standard procedure at all levels?
I don't know. I just know I had to do it.
Okay.
And then I go see Don. I saw Don second. So I walk in, and I just ask him, I said, what the hell was the ruling? And he goes, they completely fucked it up. What the umpire ruled was that because the runner at first left, he was out as a result of a force out to end the inning, which meant that the runner could not score from third base.
Okay.
Don said, I tried to explain to him that only pertains to the hitter, not to anybody on the bases. The hitter was the second out, not the third out, meaning the run, because it scored well before the final out, should have counted.
Interesting.
We didn't get an answer from the Midwest League for a couple of days. Midwest League said Don was right. The umpire was wrong. That run should have counted. So Don wanted me. So the way it worked was at the end, after both sides got their chance to tell me that my box score was bullshit.
Airing of the grievances.
I had to go, and it was a complicated procedure in 2003. I had to go find a computer that actually had internet at frickin' Coleman Field.
Go to the Beloit Public Library.
With the box score download from my laptop couldn't connect to the internet, the one they gave me. I had to put it on a floppy disk. Put the floppy disk in the other computer, pull up the file, and then go to this thing. It was like How Sports Data, I think, was the place I had to send it to.
Okay.
If there was ever an error that needed to be corrected at a later date, there was a little form I could fill out explaining what the error was. And I actually had one. It was embarrassing. At the end of a very long doubleheader, the Snappers lost by 4 runs. As I was wrapping things up, I gave some guy came in to pitch the 7th, because just like now in the big leagues, the Class A doubleheaders were 7 innings.
Okay.
Snappers are down by 4. Guy comes in for the other team, pitches a perfect inning, and as I'm just want to get the fuck out of there, I gave him a save. We didn't earn a save. So the next day, their radio guy goes, how did he get a save? I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't get one. So I had to fill out the thing and send it in, and then they took the save off the guy's total.
Okay.
Don wanted me to send one in, putting the run back that the Snappers didn't score. And I said, I can't do that.
That's a little different. That's not a scorer's error. That was the umpire's judgment.
Right. I said the score is right. The umpires ruled that wasn't a run. It turns out after the fact they were wrong.
Wrong, right.
But that doesn't mean we get to put the run back.
Right.
He must have brought that up to me like 5 times.
Because you refused to, you're intransient or whatever, stubborn.
It then changed to a couple of games after that. They had this 26-year-old non-prospect shortstop named Chaz Turney. He came in to play shortstop after Bachelor fans will remember Josh Murray, the brother of former Georgia quarterback and NFL quarterback Aaron Murray, was a first-round pick of the Brewers. He was playing shortstop when I first got there in 2003. Was not doing well. One of the things I most distinctly remember about that season was it was early on. I was maybe a month into it, and I've got everything wrapped up. I just have to show the box score to Don, and his office door is closed. And I'm like, I don't know, do I knock on his door? I mean, I don't know what to do. So I look around, and one of the interns, I'm like, what do I do? And he goes, oh, he's got Murray in there. Don't just wait. So we sit around for like 10 or 15 minutes. Door finally comes flying open. There's Don wearing, like a ripped up baseball undershirt, and he wore, thankfully, under his baseball pants, he always wore sliding shorts. Basically, like white compression shorts. That's all he's got on. I think he had his socks and stirrups on, but he didn't have any shoes on. He comes like waddling out of his office, and I've told you this before. If he didn't know your name, he just called you Steve. So he's just kind of yelling to nobody, "Hey, Steve, does anybody have a bus schedule?" Because they were sending Josh Murray back to, I don't know if they're sending him extended spring training or the rookie league again, but they had to get him to Milwaukee to get on the airport, to go to the airport. So they replaced him with this guy named Chaz Turney, who was playing in like an independent league. They just needed a body to play shortstop. And Chaz wasn't very good, but he was there, and he played pretty much the whole rest of the season. They won their half of the Midwest League. And there's a close play at first base where the first baseman doesn't make this. It's a low throw, doesn't make the scoop, and I give it a throwing error. And after the game, I go to talk to Don. He's like, no, that was a hit for Chaz. I'm like, no, I said Chaz wasn't going to beat it. So if he scoops the ball, he's out. And Don goes, yeah, but Chaz needs a hit. Chaz hasn't had a hit in like a week. I think we should just give him this one. I'm like, no, I'm not going to change it. Now I already talked to the other team. I'm not going to change it to a hit. So that became have you put the run back yet? For literally like the next 2 months, he would just out of nowhere ask me if I gave Chaz his hit yet. Yeah. Which was mostly meant as him trying to be funny, but he may have also thought Chaz needed a hit.
Well, he's looking out for his player.
He also told me at one point, he goes, any throw that Prince doesn't handle at first, it was Prince Fielder, give him an error. And I'm like, what? He goes, if there's any doubt, give the error to Prince. You're
probably doing Fielder a favor, actually. But
he goes, we need to get him to take his defense more seriously, and we're going to shame him into it.
Well, right. I think objectively, that's kind of the approach you'd want to take with a hot prospect, right? You don't want him to get a big head like Corey Patterson, right? You want to, you don't want to give him anything easily.
So the other scoring thing that I always remember from that season was, so the way it happened when I first started there was I had this ancient laptop that had the score sheet program on that I had to use to score the game.
Was this ancient in 2003? Or you're just saying, okay.
Yeah, it was a crappy laptop in 2003. And then they gave me a blank score sheet. So I was supposed to score the game on pencil and then type the stuff into the computer. And for the $25 a game I was making, also run the scoreboard.
That's a lot.
Run the score, the hits, the errors, the batter, the balls, and the strikes, and the outs.
And without fucking any of that up, I think the hardest part would be to transcribe the box score into that line. The scorebook score into the box score.
So basically, what I decided after a couple of days was I'm not scoring anymore on paper. Fuck that, which was dumb, because if that ancient computer died at any point during a game, I wouldn't know what happened. I didn't have a record of it, but I couldn't do all three things at once. I physically couldn't do it, especially with the and not only this, the scoreboard. Now, if you could picture the console I had for this scoreboard, it had it had room for 10. It had 2 rows of 10 little levers that you flipped up or down to make the score, like for the top of the first, the bottom of the first. So there's 20 of those to make the score go up or down. Then there was one for runs, hits, and errors for both teams. Then there was one for balls, strikes, and outs. There was a hit and an error one that didn't work, but somehow it got screwed up. So to put the runs on the board in the top of the 7th, the switch was actually like for the bottom of the 5th. They didn't line up.
You just have to know.
So I've got all this going on, and I'm like, screw it, I'm not writing this stuff down. Now, the Snappers didn't have a radio broadcast at all, but the visiting teams always did. So my only fallback was if that laptop had ever died, I was going to have to go to their radio guy and
ingratiate yourself to.
Can I see your scorebook? It was probably not the best way to handle it.
Right, and then Jim Taco turns around and says, "How many games have you been to?"
That's right. Have you done 100 games yet?
Well,
the saddest part was he ended up being right about Felix PA, which still pisses me off.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, a couple of crazy things happened. So if for those all 4 of you who've ever been to beautiful Pullman Field in Beloit, Wisconsin, and if you ever want to go again, you have to go quickly because they're playing their last games there before their new stadium opens up downtown.
Get a piece of history, kids.
There are concession stands built into the grandstand in the back, like a typical park. You walk in and go by them. But there was also this little shack down the right field line that was called the Firehouse. And it had better stuff because they had like the big outdoor grills and stuff. So if you wanted like a barbecue chicken sandwich or a really good brat, you went to the Firehouse.
King County used to have that's minor league baseball.
And they made all the cheese curds in the Firehouse, even if you got them at the regular concession stand, but they were always fresher if you got them at the Firehouse.
That's great.
So I show up after a road trip, because obviously I only did the home games. I sit down in the press box, and I'm sitting there, and I look, and something just seems weird. And I look at the PA guy, and I'm like, what's weird? He's like, he points, he goes, Firehouse burned down. It was gone.
Oh, no.
They rebuilt it, because it was basically just like it was a shed, basically. So by the end of the season, it was back.
Right, but it inconvenienced all of the patrons.
I would have thought that thing would have burned for like a month. It was like when Luclos caught fire in DeKalb.
Like a tire fire.
We thought it was going to be like the Olympic flame. It would just burn forever.
Yeah.
Another time, so we had this long rain delay, and they finally called the game. So I head home. I come back the next night, and there's no console for the scoreboard on my thing. And I'm looking around for it. I'm like,
got wet and shorted.
I'm like, where is the console? And so Dave comes up and he sits down, and he points at the scoreboard. He's like, "See, you like our new scoreboard?" And I look, and I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "Got struck by lightning." So it shorted out the scoreboard completely. So we had interns standing out there with paper, writing down the score and putting it on the innings. And that lasted for the rest of that homestand. I didn't have to do the scoreboard, so that was kind of nice. Then they fixed it. And so when they fixed it, do you think that they fixed the 5th inning and the 7th inning thing?
Well, that's good.
They didn't. No, they did not.
Oh, they didn't.
No, it worked exactly the same way.
Oh, Christ.
They since have a new scoreboard.
I'm assuming with everything you had going on that your ability to get the ball and strike up instantaneously was just trailed behind the guy, speed freak video gamer that's been doing that in the Wrigley Field scoreboard for years, right? The joke was you're at the game, you watch the pitch, you spin your head to the scoreboard, and it's already got the ball or strike up there. How does he do that?
Never catch that. Yeah, I didn't do that. One thing I did that became a tradition even after I left, though, was So I always kept, picture the scoreboard with the line score. As runs came in during an inning, I always kept the total up to date. But I didn't put the score in for the top or the bottom of the inning until the inning ended.
Right.
And it was partially because, you go to Wrigley and they put the temporary number up.
The yellow number.
Yeah, and then they switch it to white. Well, we couldn't change the thing. So I thought it's going to be hard for a fan, if they wander away and come back, to know what inning it is. So I'm just not going to change it. That's going to be the thing. But then what would happen, and it happened kind of inadvertently, although it was kind of cool, was the Brewers had a huge inning. They scored 8 runs in an inning relatively early in the season. The inning ends, and I very slowly changed it from 0 to 1 to 2 up to 8. And the crowd started cheering as the number kept getting higher and higher, like a game show almost.
Look at you.
So we kept it. So we always but the visitor score I put up as fast as I could. So like if the Brewers gave up 6 runs in the 5th, I just as soon as the inning ended, I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We just put it up. Because fuck them. They're not gonna get to sit in the dugout and enjoy their number going up slowly.
Do they still do that at Pullman Field, by the way?
I don't know.
Well, you'll have to go back before the wrecking ball hits.
I don't know if the new scoreboard
actually piece of their history.
I don't know if the new scoreboard has the inning by inning.
Oh, they could probably just it might be a little bit more advanced and whatnot.
Okay, so I told you the thing about only scoring on the laptop and not on paper for a reason. So we get to it's the 4th game of the Midwest League Championship. It's the Snappers have to win to force Game 5 the next day, or the Lugnuts win the Midwest League.
The Cub affiliate, yes. Lugnuts.
Felix PA is on third base for the Lugnuts.
There you go.
With 1 out. Fly ball hit to the outfield. Outfielder catches it. Felix comes in, scores. The Lugnuts take the lead. And I type the stuff in, put this run up on the board, and then I see the Snapper pitcher step off the rubber, throw to third, and the umpire call Felix out.
Oh, you're kidding.
He left third too soon.
Championship level game?
Yes. And I realized I have no idea what the code for the scoring thing is for the runner left early. I don't know how to do this.
You mean for like an official scorekeeper?
Right, you actually had to type in, like,
there's a code.
It was pretty intuitive. Like a fly ball or right fielder, I typed
a lot
in
of it,
F9.
Yeah, it translates to like the scoring you make in a scorebook for most part, I'm guessing. All right.
But I'm like, shit, I don't know how to do this. I did know how to go back and reset Felix on third, and I decided I was just going to have him get picked off 1-5. Who's going to know the difference? Who cares? It's the last game. It's at the best the second to last game of the season. But at the last minute, I'm like, well, these things are kind of intuitive. So I did 1-5 RLE and hit return, and it worked.
What's RLE?
Runner left early. And it wrapped everything up, and it ended the inning, and it flipped to the next one. And then we even, after the game, we even looked at it did the very primitive play-by-play, and it said PA Felix, a runner left early, 1-5. So I was very proud of myself.
Nice job.
That did not prevent the Lugnuts from winning the game or the championship.
So that's the night the season ended. I thought the story ends with the computer crapped out right after the last out.
I took the computer and I threw it onto the field and let the lawnmower run over it. So, but yeah, there were all kinds of crazy shit happening that year.
You should write a book. There's some good stories in there. And all that's going on while you go home at night and you watch the Cubs make this unlikely bid for the World Series. So,
well, I remember after a game going in and Don is sitting with his feet up on the desk, and he had this he had his locker, he had this crappy old metal desk, this crappy old metal chair, and then he had this locker, and he had a TV, this old tube TV on top of it.
You get Chicago TV up in Beloit, right?
Huh?
You get Chicago TV in Beloit, right? Or no?
No, you get Rockford, or you
get Milwaukee,
Madison. Get Rockford and Madison.
Okay.
He's got his feet up on the desk. I walk in with the thing. He goes, "Did you see what this dumb shit did?" I look up, and Jeremy Gonzalez is pitching for the Rays against Sammy Sosa.
Cork bat.
It was the cork bat game. That's how I learned about Sammy's cork bat. Was Don Money
I was in the
fun
Celtic Crown, like chatting up with a neighbor when that happened.
Yeah.
June of 2003. Lou Piniella was near the dugout. Well, if we pull up 2003 on the wheel tonight, we can either revisit that or consider it checked.
All right, so that's probably enough Lloyd Snapper official score talk.
Yeah, any more we'll have to do a spin-off.
Yes. So it is time. Speaking of spin-off.
Yes.
It is time to spin the wheel. Here we go. I'm going to pull up the wheel of crap.
And
last week was 2005.
It was 2005.
Which means we cannot do 2004 or 2006.
And while that wheel spins, just to remind everybody, we're doing 32 seasons, and so far we've done 7 to date. We've done 3 teams that are 500 or better, 3 that have been under. Also done a playoff team, so we've done 6. We have to spin again. Actually,
look how close now. Of course, only we could see it. That thing came within a centimeter of being 2003. It went over to 2004, which means we have to spin again.
Yeah,
but we almost. It's as though we planned it. But we didn't.
I'll tell you what. Right, that would have been so. I've thought in my head about when we do 2003 and how taxing that might be.
Instead, we are going to do 1991. So, Mike, as always, we start with.
Yep.
What are your 5 quick facts about the 1991 Cubs?
Opening day starter was newly signed Danny Jackson. Don Zimmer got fired almost to the day that we're doing this podcast, almost 30 years of the day. I know it was around Memorial Day. Don Zimmer was fired and replaced by the immortal Jim Essian. Also in 1991 for the first of 2 seasons, the opening day third baseman was Gary Scott. So some of this might be redundant because we have done 1992, by the way. This is the first adjacent season that we've done with one before. Also in 1991, let me just say Sean Dunston hit a homer on the not opening day, but the Cubs home opener at Wrigley Field, which it might have been opening day for the season. So I might be wrong there, but Dunston did hit a home run on opening day. And 1991, we've discussed it before. I'm just going to put it in context, the historical context for the 5 facts. As I've defined them, this is the final year, really, of what I call Tribune 1, the era of Tribune ownership where they were dedicated to building a team for reasons in which we're going to discuss for the next hour or 90 minutes or so. The chapter sort of closed, and the era that we've been most accustomed to in the 90s and whatnot, the mediocrity by design, was sort of implemented. It was really the last season that the Tribune Company made, with the exception of the brief Sam Zell era, the last time that they genuinely made an attempt to be one of the big boys and take home the prize. So
do you remember who managed the Cubs in between Don Zimmer and Jim Essian?
Would it be the winner of the 1983, the manager of the 1983 world champion Baltimore Orioles, Joe Altobelli?
That is exactly who it was. And did Joe Altobelli go 0-1 or 1-0?
It wasn't a doubleheader. Did he go 1-1?
He only managed 1 game.
Okay.
Maybe Jim Essian showed up just in time for game 2.
You say, "Who are you?"
I'm here.
Just like Roy Hobbs was dropping his suitcase in the dugout. 0-1. I want to say it might have been in New York Shea Stadium. I could be wrong though. But yeah,
poor Joe went 0-1. Did John Vukovic? Did he go 2-0 in 2 different attempts?
Well, so we can quickly rehash historically. We'll go over these seasons, mid-season firings, I guess. The only one that I think, so in 83, a couple months after his tirade, Lee Elia was relieved of his duties and replaced by clearly an interim Charlie Fox. I don't think there was an interim in between there. But in 1987, when Gene Michael was let go by Dallas Green, Frank Lucchese wrote out the season, and I want to say that might not have been John Vukovic. I think John Vukovic got his games in after Friday, Frey, the 13th, 1986, when Jim Frey was relieved of his duties by Green, and before Stick Michael was hired by Green. I'm pretty sure that was when, for sure, Vukovic managed 1 or 2 games. So I don't know if he went 2-0, 1-1. I know that's some really granular information to sort of hold on to, not just interim managers, but what we're talking about isn't even really an interim manager. It's like a temporary man. Joe Altobelli managed for one day. John Vukovic managed for 1 or 2 games.
So Joe Altobelli managed May 21st, 1991 at Shea Stadium.
Aha.
The Cubs responded to their new manager by taking a 3-0 lead off of Dwight Gooden in the top of the first.
Wow.
They then responded by allowing 4 runs in the bottom of the first and 3 more in the second. So they were down 7-3 by the end of the second inning.
Wah wah.
His lineup, the lineup he got to roll out there: Doug DeCenzo, Ryan Sandberg, Mark Grace, George Bell, Andre Dawson, Luis Salazar, Jose Vizcaino, Damon Berryhill, and Rick Sutcliffe.
Where was Vizcaino playing? Third or short? Was Dunston not in that lineup?
He was playing shortstop because Sandberg was playing second. He got Ryan off his feet, as they like to say, after 2 at-bats, and Chico Walker came in. Got 3 at-bats.
So I don't know if 91 would qualify in any way as like a unique season, but the one thing that springs to mind was we discussed 1989 a few years ago. It's the most fun we've had, as it should be. And as we've put it in the historical context, it was a period that in retrospect should have been the start of something big. So in an alternate universe, 1991 is, a playoff team that's battling the Braves for the supremacy. So what happens is what was happening at the time before our eyes, which is always hard to see history in real time. And we've discussed it before, but it bears repeating because it's historical fact, and it's good to know that Jim Fry was in over his head as a general manager and was basically, selling off the best parts and getting little in return and not bringing in anything in the pipeline behind it. And so, 89 was a very, fun year, but also cause for maybe some long-term optimism. We discussed how young that team was and how homegrown they were. And they, had a little bit of a setback in 1990. And because Tribune ownership, we're in Tribune 1, Era 1, since they were committed to doing whatever it took at that point to, at least on the field, build a team, they let Jim Fry do what he needed to do to retain that glory from 89. Okay. Now at that point, by 1991, Jerome Walton, I think, had sort of, eaten himself out of the league or just proved to be a mirage. But they had a lot of good parts. Sandberg was in his absolute prime. They were still, Dawson was starting to reach the end, but still a quality contributor. They had Maddox. I don't think they saw Mike Bolecki as a long-term guy, but they had Grace, really solid they had some good pieces, right? So Jim Fry goes to market and he picks up Danny Jackson, who was, a top tier he was definitely a top tier free agent sign, and Dave Smith, who was a closer. Jackson was a starting pitcher for the Reds, and he won the World Series. He was coming off the World Series, I want to say, with Cincinnati. Dave Smith was really, in retrospect, over the hill, but he was numbers wise still seen as an effective closer.
Still throwing 78 miles an hour, regardless.
And the market dictated he was not a cheap signing. He was a big free agent signing. And the third one was George Bell, who was going to replace. In '89 they kind of patched together this Lloyd McClendon, Dwight Smith thing, and Smith proved to be a great left-handed hitter, but he just was starting to see that for all of his skills, he might not be the long-term answer as an everyday left fielder. George Bell was very much proven. I think George Bell was the American League MVP in '87 when Dawson was the MVP for the Cubs. So on the corners, the Cubs have 2 outfielders that have won an MVP in the previous 5 years. Hadn't quite solved center, I guess. I mean, you just pointed to the game where DeCenzo was in there. I think they still were hoping Walton would return the glory. But it was a team that I remember that it was about as optimistic as a Cubs fan had been in 50 years, or I'm sorry, 30 years. 20 years. I have to date myself here. But since the DeRocher era Cubs, we had a playoff team in '84 and a playoff team in '89, but they didn't. You could say this team was sort of an extension of the '89 team, maybe trying to sort of glom on to like the sort of dynastic seeds that may have been there. And so they opened the season. I don't know if they did actually open at home on a Friday against the Cardinals. I know that was their home opener. It might not have even been a Friday. But what I do remember is that they had we talked about the 2001 Cubs, and who had like 3 crushing blows over 6 weeks at the end of the 2001 season. The 1991 Cubs, thanks to Dave Smith, had, I'm pretty sure, 3 absolutely crushing losses in the first month. That this overly talented, expensive, high payroll team, I want to guess the Cubs are probably one of the top 3 payrolls in the National League. That it's like they couldn't come back from it. So I guess they would call up the Baseball Reference schedule to bring your attention to the weekend in April in Pittsburgh. And you're going to have, I think, a 4-game series. And I want to say that in the first of the 4 games, Dawson won it with a grand slam in either extra innings or the 9th inning, or he may not have even won it. This might have been a game they blew. See, my memories, can get a little bit hazy. I do know that there's without a doubt that the 91 season crumbled pretty early. The game that actually sticks out would be the Sunday game, which we're going to have to definitely break down. But it was basically 3. It felt like 3 losses in a week that were all like crushing road losses. That it just seemed like they never really recovered. I don't even think they got back to 500. But in Pittsburgh themselves, the Pirates were defending champions for the first time. They won 3 consecutive National League East crowns in 90, 91, 92. So they're defending champs. And the Cubs go in there. They do win, 3-2. So it wasn't a grand slam that Dawson hit, but I know that he hit one late, Thursday, April 18th. Maybe not. They win the first game, though. Cubs are 7-3. So they actually get off to a good start. Pittsburgh's 5-5. They lose on Friday, April 19th in a walk-off.
That's the game. Dawson hit a grand slam of Stan Belinda in the top of the 9th.
Once again, Stan Belinda
the Cubs were down 3-0, took a 4-3 lead. Dave Smith came in to pitch the 9th, and he started.
What happens?
So he faced former Cub star Curtis Wilkerson, base hit.
Yeah,
Gary
already
Reedus,
a former
base hit. Jay Bell is batting, wild pitch, scores Wilkerson. Reedus goes to second. Jay Bell, of course, bunts, because that's what Jay Bell did.
Yep.
But the game tied. He gets Van Slyke to ground into a double play. Or no, ground into just a ground out. So they have Reedus as a third with 1 out. They walk they walk Bobby Bonilla. They walk Barry Bonds. And Jeff King singles to
Jeff King,
score the winning run.
Who brained Mitch Williams, as we discussed once before. Okay, so tough loss, right? Like, they go into Pittsburgh defending NL East champs. They take the first game, a hard-won, close game, 3-2. Sutcliffe gets his first win of the year. They're about to steal the game. Frickin' Dawson. Was it a grand slam that Dawson hit in the 9th? I always thought that
they were down 3-0, and he hit a grand slam, put them up 4-3.
And then he hits a grand slam, puts up 4-3, and then Dave Smith, new a big free agent signing. Even though he was old, he was a big free agent signing. They can't hang on. Okay, next game, Pittsburgh blows them out. All right, a little bit of a hangover, but the Cubs can salvage the season. Right, we go to the Sunday game. So this is just a wild one. But basically, the Cubs are leading by 1, and in the 8th. Was that when Dawson did it again? No, it wasn't. But they add on. They get a bunch of State Farm insurance runs to take am I reading this right? A 5-run lead going in the bottom of the 8th inning. So this one isn't automatically on Dave Smith.
Well, it's getting
but yeah, in the bottom of the 8th, our good friend Paul Assmaker,
as Harry liked to call him.
Paul Assmaker comes in, makes it a little close. He gives the 4 back, the 4 insurance runs that the Cubs had just gotten the top of the 8th, gives them right back. But the Cubs are still holding on to the game, right? Let's go to the bottom of the 9th. The Cubs don't do anything at the top of the 9th, but then in the bottom of the 9th, our friend Dave Smith comes in, and I'll let you take that again, Andy.
All right, so with the Cubs leading 7-6, Dave Smith comes in. This was an odd move in the top of the 9th. Sandberg grounded out to lead off the inning, and then Zimmer pinch hit Luis Salazar for Mark Grace.
Jesus.
He struck out. So he was playing first base in the bottom of the 9th. So yeah, everything's better. Better hitter and a better defender. Louis Sells are in.
Hey, we got Dave Smith in the bullpen.
Hopefully Grace said like he OD'd on Winston's or something in the dugout. He had to come. I had to beg out. I was like, Don, I can't go.
Just incredible.
So Jeff King leads off with a single. Don
in
Slott
the ninth,
bunts him to second because God love him, nobody likes to bunt more than Jim Leyland. Chico leaned, flies out to left. So there we go. Gary Varsho, former Cub. All you got to do is get him out and you win. He doubles, and that scores Jeff King. They intentionally walk Orlando Merced, and then J. Bell grounds out. So we're tied, and we're going to the 10th.
Going to the 10th, and our good friends Chuck McElroy. We haven't mentioned Heathcliff Slocum in a podcast, but Chuck has certainly been mentioned. But they get together, kind of dance around a little bit of danger in the bottom of the 10th. The Cubs do nothing in the top of the 10th, but they tap the 11th.
Chuck pitches around a one-out double to Bonilla. He strikes out Barry Bonds. So he gets Barry Bonds out.
Defending MVP, I want to say, his first one.
So what does Don Zimmer do to Jeff King? He intentionally walks him. Because Don loved to hand out intentional walks, apparently.
I can't believe how much baseball we watch in 1990. All these intentional walks and sacrifice bunts.
And that brings in the great Heathcliff Slocum, who immediately throws a wild pitch to Don Slott. So there's runners at second and third. Winning run 90 feet away. But he gets Don Slott to ground out. So we're off to the 11th.
All right, here's our chance, Cubs.
Yes. So the Cubs, Erik Pappas leads off with a walk.
I don't remember Erik Pappas, by the way. Do you?
If you had made me guess, I would have guessed he was a pitcher, but I don't think he was.
No recollection whatsoever, because I would have remembered him. Oh, my older brothers saw Milt Pappas pitch. But anyway.
So Erik Pappas walks off the great Bob Kipper, and then Jose Vizcaino walks. So runners at first and second. They bring in future Cub Bob Patterson. What was Bob Patterson best known for as a Cub?
Refining and stitching his teammates' baseball gloves.
He could fix his teammates' gloves. That's what we remember about Bob Patterson.
And he was a member of the '98 Cubs, so we'll get him some love next time. When we do that season.
Jerome Walton bunts.
Of course.
Problem is
poorly.
Yes, he bunts poorly. They throw Pappas out, going to third, so there's still runners at first and second. Sandberg comes up. He singles. That would have scored Pappas, but instead it loads the bases. Salazar now hitting for Grace, which really comes in handy. He grounds out to the third baseman, so they throw Vizcaino out at the plate.
They got a 5-2. No, there's 2 outs. Bases
two outs,
loaded.
And now you're down to Doug DeCenzo.
Little Doug DeCenzo.
And what is Doug going to do? He singles. It scores Jerome Walton. Cubs take the lead. Everybody's excited.
And then for good measure,
Dawson comes up for the second time in 3 days. He hits a grand slam.
In the 9th inning or later.
Yes.
Or 8th inning or later.
So
or
the
whatever.
Cubs have an insurmountable 12-7 lead. Going because Dunston flies out to center. Heathcliff Slocum is going to stay in it. He's got a 5-run lead. Just bing, bang, boom.
And here's a good sign. Not that it mattered, but Dwight Smith comes in for defense.
Yeah, that's right. Andre exhausted from carrying the team on his back again.
He had separated shoulders.
His bad knees couldn't take carrying all 24 other guys, so they put Dwight in, the worst defensive outfielder they have. Goes into right field. And Heathcliff comes out hot. He walks Jose Lind. He gives up a single to Curtis Wilkerson. He gives up a single to Orlando Merced. Future Cub, okay. Orlando Merced.
We've got a 5-run lead.
Bases loaded. So they're not in Grand Slam range yet. So you bring in a hero of the 1989 Cubs, Mike Bilecki. And everything's going to be fine. J. Bell greets him with a double on a full count. Scores 2. No big deal. Still got a 3-run lead. Any events like sack fly, Merced scores, no big deal, 2-run lead. There's how many outs are there? Just
one.
Just one.
They never got another out in the game.
Walks Bobby Bonilla. Barry Bonds, base hit, scores Bell. Gary Reedus hits for Bob Patterson. That's probably your best chance to get out of it. He walks Gary Reedus, and then Don Slott hits a double, scores Bonilla and Bonds, and the Cubs lose 13-12.
Just to rehash that, kids, in case you weren't following, the Cubs scored 5 runs in the top of the 11th, including Andre Dawson's second grand slam of the series, only to give up 6. Now, you might think that is just incredible. How do you want to go to the next game for the Cubs? So they get out of Pittsburgh, they go to St. Louis. Once again, if you go to the very next game, so far we've got a string here of 3 games. We're going for our 4th game here in this stretch where the Cubs haven't won one and they've lost 2 after having leads late. They go into St. Louis and they're leading this game 2-0 after 7. They give up a run in the 8th to the Cardinals. I don't know who was
Gilkey.
Yeah, this was a Sean Bosky start against Jamie Moyer, former Cub. He'd already come back 2 years after being traded with Paul Merrill from
Bosky was cruising, so
it was a pitcher's duel.
Zimmer rolled him into the 8th.
Okay.
He got Todd Zeile out, gave up a single to Tom Pagnazzi. I'm sure the bullpen started to crank up about that time. He walked Jose Oquendo, which should be immediate hook.
Yep.
But that didn't happen.
Nope.
He gives up a fly ball to Gerald Perry. So there's 2 outs. He can get out of this, but Gilkey gets a single, drives in Pagnazzi. Then Paul Assmaker comes in and gets out Ozzie Smith. So Cubs still have the lead. No problem.
2-1.
Cubs still have the lead. Plus you have Dawson, Salazar, and Barry Hill facing Juan Augusto. So of course you're going to get
former White Sox.
But no, he 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Now I want to check something real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in this game, Salazar started at first, but Grace came in for him later. So I wonder if Grace, maybe it's a 2021 Mark Grace. He had a little hamstring or a lower back,
or they're just sitting, or they're just protecting him against lefties. Oh, he may have pulled his hammy in Pittsburgh and came out. Wow. Yeah, I see, but he came into this game. So why would he come into this game? Moyer started, and so he may have played.
Why would you rest anybody against Jamie Moyer and? 1990.
Well, right, because especially, no doubt, Moyer was basically kind of fighting for.
He wasn't Jamie Moyer yet.
He was fighting for survival. Yep. I will say that, although it was way too early to know this, that this was Mark Grace's worst overall season in Chicago. I mentioned it before. After a nice start to his career, he had a couple ebbs. It was around the time he got divorced, and he was probably just hitting the bottle a little bit heavy or whatever. So it was not one of Grace's finest. He did lead the league in at bats that season, and he still had a 719 OPS. He was always a pretty consistent hitter, but by his standards, he was down a little bit. He started to really pull himself up beginning of the next season. But again, that's neither here nor there. That's got nothing to do with this quirky playing time because we're only in the 3rd week of the season. And of course, we're seeing the Cubs about to light it on flames.
So you can already tell how much confidence Don Zimmer has in Dave Smith. With a 1-run lead, he leaves Assenmacher in to face Ray Lankford. He gets him out. So now he's going to bring in Dave to pitch to Pedro Guerrero,
who's like 50 at this point.
Yes. Pedro walks, and Rex Hudler, the annoying Rex Hudler, pinch runs for Guerrero, and Felix Jose comes up.
As Harry Carey used to say, I always want to call him Jose Felix.
Or Junior Felix, which he would do occasionally, because that was another guy.
That's right.
Dave Smith gives up a home run to Felix Jose, and the Cubs lose again.
And Baseball Reference validates my memory of it being opposite field. I was a freshman at Northern. I remember being in the dorms. I remember the Friday night game where Dawson hits a grand slam, a stunning grand slam, but then they pissed the game away. And I remember also that on the Sunday game, that wild Sunday game, I did not witness that, thank God, but I do remember, I don't know, I was into like maybe eating dinner or something. I remember I stepped off the elevator, Grant North 4D, and one of my floor mates, this is the end of the freshman year, anyways, everybody knew where I stood. He just looks at me, shakes his head. I didn't know what happened. He's like, man, and he was a Sox fan, but I can't believe what I just saw. So yeah, you had to describe it to me, and then I was fear. But I do remember Monday night after classes. It's the night game. It's the freshman year is almost over. Still going to follow those Cubs. They've had a couple back-breaking losses against the defending National League East champion Pirates, but no, we're gonna turn it around. And then for the third time in 4 fucking days, they blow a lead in the 9th inning or later, and that was, I felt like that was it. It shouldn't have been. The team was good on paper. I don't know. They were 7-7 after that game. Do we know if they made it back above 500? I know they finished under, but it just felt like that's it. Let's pack it in, folks. And I think the fates of Zimmer were sealed. The fate of Jim Fry was probably sealed, and everything. It was sort of an epoch change. Eventually, didn't know it at the time, but it was a team that was really built to compete. It was not mediocrity by design. It should have been good, but April, and it felt like it ended early.
Cubs celebrated Cinco de Mayo in Atlanta with a win, which started a 3-game winning streak, which got them to 14-13.
Heady times.
They were also 15-14, and then they were 17-18 when they played a 16-inning game in Philadelphia.
I don't recall that game.
This would have been right around the time that. What do you think the score?
I just looked at
of the 16. This was I don't know how you don't remember this. Cubs and the Phillies played 16 innings, and the Phillies won 1-0.
You want to know why?
Played game.
And you know why you don't remember that game either? It was on a Friday night, May 17th, 1991. I guarantee you, we were watching the Bulls in either the first or second round. They were on their way to their first championship. A 0-0 game for. I kind of, now that I'm looking at the box score, I'm having some. It's not going to trigger unless I saw some video.
Greg Maddux pitched 9 innings, gave up 4 hits, struck out 8, and it would take 4 more pitchers after him to settle this.
Wow.
He dueled the great Pat Combs, who went 8 innings, gave up 5 hits, struck out 1. He struck out 1 guy.
Wow. And how many innings? 8 innings?
Gave up 4 walks. Cubs had 9 base runners in 8 innings against the great Pat Combs. Didn't score a run.
Frustrating.
The game ended when Lester Lacknaster gave up a RBI single to Dickie Thon that scored Dale Murphy, because even in 1991 the Phillies were playing the best of the early 80s.
Well,
with Dickie Thon, Dale Murphy, Steve Lake, Ricky Jordan, Charlie Hayes, former
Lake
Cub at that point.
Former and future.
Oh, that's right,
Cub.
former and future.
Steve Lake had come back. Dickie Thon was mentioned because when we did 1989, of course, the Cubs had that miraculous opening day victory over the Phillies, and Thon was in that lineup. And I didn't interrupt to go on a digression there. But
Mike Torres.
Yes. I was going to say, what is the first thing that you think of when you hear the name Dickie Thon? And Mike Torres is. So now, before I go forward, I have to say that I thought about this a couple of years ago and looked up Dickie Thon and realized that he did not have as good of a year as I thought he did. But I remember Dickie Thon first from his 1981 Topps card, and he was with the Angels. And I remember him because, of course, I was 8 years old, and his first name was Dickie.
Yeah, Dickie, which was hilarious. Just like Dickie Knowles. Except Dickie Thon never got traded for himself, like Dickie Knowles. Right.
And as far as we know, didn't have a severe drinking problem. And throw at George Brett in the World Series, supposedly. So, but then Thon was at some point dealt to Houston, and I think he had a really good season in '83, but it was not as good as I thought. By today's standards, I think he just had like a hot ball in play, average, whatever. But he had sort of he looked like maybe a good up and coming player.
Yeah, I think he was an all-star. He was 25 years old. Shortstops didn't hit for power. He hit 20 homers in the Astrodome.
That's right. 798 OPS.
He stole 34 bases, although
he Astrodome. Yeah.
He stole 34 bases in 50 attempts, which nowadays would be like, no, Dickie, stop. You're not helping.
Yep.
He won a Silver Slugger. He was an all-star, and he finished 7th in the MVP voting.
Yep.
So.
And then in early in '84
Game 5.
It was at Shea Stadium. I think so. It was not in the Astrodome. Mike Torres, who of course up that point, have been best known for having served up Bucky Dent's famous home run over the Green Monster in 1978. Mike Torres threw high and inside to Thon, hit him right in the fucking face. And Thon never came back that season. He only played 84 games the following season. And it took him about 5 whole seasons before he could even, get a job. He had a 755 OPS in his first year in Philly in 89. But, he ended up it sticks with you because he did. Yeah, it's a pretty good season. And you know what? You're right when you say shortstops in 1983.
Yeah.
We should save this for a discussion when we pull up an 80 season because we had the epitome of the shortstops of that era and Larry Baugh. And I'm thinking like Johnny LeMaster, like Mark Belanger was on he was a critical part of these great Baltimore Orioles team. That guy, I don't think ever hit more than 220. Shortstops were just the worst goddamn hitters all across the board. I remember Johnny LeMaster with the Giants. Gary Templeton was an exception. He was a shortstop that could hit from back then. But if you go up and down, if you just pull up like a 1978 Major League roster, shortstop's offensive output was an afterthought. So what Dickie Thon did for the Astros in '83 actually it was pretty exceptional.
You didn't like Roy Smalley Jr.?
No. Although I like the stories about Roy Smalley Sr. that our dads would tell us about throwing the ball into the stands 40 years.
Dickie Thon led the National League in 82 with 10 triples. Had a good 83. In 84, it was only 5 games, but he was hitting 353, 389, 471 when he got hit.
Yeah. And
he played 9 more years after that. But he was never anywhere near as good as he was in 1983. And he literally had a dark spot in his vision in the eye that he got hit forever.
Is that right?
Yeah. The ball would things would disappear into it and then come back. And it's amazing that he played at all. But he played a long time. He just wasn't nearly as good as he had been.
Yeah. So I think, of course, sticks around long enough to get the winning run in this 1-0 slog, so that put the Cubs. So this is, like you said, this is in May 17th, made the Cubs 17-18. And did we determine,
Cubs had a full season by the middle of May. I mean, they had done it all and they still had, 4 months to go. So that's about the time, right, that Don Granesco decides he needs to evaluate Don Zimmer.
Right.
Which Don Zimmer basically tells Don Granesco to go fuck himself. There's your evaluation. And
that's it. And for all you kids out there, if you know who Don Granesco is, we've talked at length about the Dallas Green reign, which went from 1982 until he was unceremoniously pushed out after the '87 season. They were still trying to win, so I want to be clear about that. They were not trying to shoot for the middle and keep the park full, but they still did sort of hedge their bets a little bit when in replacing Green, they hired Fry, but also hired Granesco. So they kind of had a 2-headed operation where Fry was in charge of baseball operation. Fry had the title of general manager and was in charge of baseball operations, and Granesco was kind of in this more Tribune-esque, McDonough-esque sort of just more of the businessman. I made the comparison before that he was sort of like the antecedent to Crane Kenny in a sense, this sort of suited guy,
just as beloved too.
Right. Yeah. Not liked by anybody. Certainly not liked by former players and managers like Zimmer. And Fry probably had a difficult time. Not that it mattered because Fry, it didn't need any help and failing, frankly. But it was a weird relationship, right? Fry was in charge of the baseball stuff, and he did have some freedom to spend. But I think, and I don't know if it had anything to do with the Cubs going over budget and failing this year. It did cost Jim Fry his job, but I don't know if it ended up, if there was ever a conflict between Fry and Granesco. But there was definitely tension between Granesco and Zimmer. And Zimmer, of course, Zimmer and Fry were childhood friends from Cincinnati, but that's where Zimmer directed a lot of his ire, Don Granesco.
So if Fry didn't get fired for the big league performance, he should have been fired for the Cubs 1991 draft. It's a beauty. Their first-round draft pick had a long career in the big leagues.
Was that Glanville?
It was Doug Glanville out of the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Their second-round pick was a guy named Bill Bliss, who never played in the big leagues. Terry Adams was their fourth-round pick.
all right.
Ozzie Timmons in the 5th round.
He made it up. Hey, these guys, 3 out of 4 made it to the show, Andy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you remember Hector Trinidad?
I do not.
He never played. He never pitched in the big leagues. I remember the name because it was weird.
I do not. I remember Trinidad Hubbard and Hector Villanueva, but I do not remember.
His best pick was his 8th round pick. The guy best known for long, leisurely strolls on the mound. Steve Traxel. But he also made a really good pick with the 9th pick in the draft. The problem was they didn't sign the guy, although he would later pitch for them. John Lieber was their 9th round draft pick. Maybe I don't know if he just didn't sign that year.
9th round.
It says he did. He was a 4th year. So did they sign him and trade him?
He had to have gone back because I think we would have known that about Lieber, right?
Like
Lieber.
They said he was a 4-year.
He was later acquired by Ed Lynch for Brant Brown, and
he got drafted the next year. So clearly,
drafted by the Cubs in the 9th round, and then drafted the next year by the Royals. Yeah. So he went to he'd actually gone to University of South Alabama. So it's kind of interesting that the Cubs drafted him after he'd already gone to college, because typically you get drafted out of high school. If you decide to go to college, you're usually kind of locked in there for 3 years.
Right.
Some guys will leave early.
So they picked him obviously after his 3rd year, and he elected to pitch a 4th year.
A 4th year. Yep. That's what he did. He gambled on himself. Good for John. One of my favorite Cub pitchers.
There are only 2 other players from the draft played in the big leagues. One of them, I don't think even you will remember. A guy named Chris Clemens. Do you remember Chris Clemens?
Nope, not in the least.
And then Robin Jennings, their 33rd round pick.
Okay.
Was one of the Ozzie Timmons, Robin Jennings,
Kevin Roberson,
Terrell Lowry, all those
Doug. There was a Doug Jennings in there that may have been a corner outfielder too. I don't know. Keichnick, Brant Brown, a lot of guys came through the corner outfield spots.
So here's another timely thing about the 1991 Cubs. The Cubs just signed the current day Cubs. Just signed a former big league middle infielder and outfielder to a minor league deal. His name is D. Gordon.
Oh, yeah.
But he now goes by his hyphenated name, D. Strange Gordon, because people don't know this. He's actually the son of 2 former Cubs, Doug Strange and Tom Flash Gordon. And Doug Strange, one of my 2 dads, played on the 91 Cubs and hit 444. Should have won the batting title, but it was only in 3 games.
So when the Gary Scott experiment failed, and we already covered Gary Scott, because again, I mentioned earlier, this is the first time in these 7 episodes that we're doing an adjacent year to one that we had done before. So, some of these hilarious cast of characters should be familiar to you. But this is year 1 of the Gary Scott, exercise or experiment. Well, Scott was sent down, and I remember Strange came up at the end of the year, and he was the 3rd baseman. I just remember, I was 20. I knew a little bit how prospects work. But I remember just thinking, well, why didn't they just call up that guy in the beginning of the year? Why did we waste our time with Gary Scott?
Yeah.
Like you said, he was hitting 400.
Jeez, we had Doug Strange all along. I always loved the fact he was good old number 1, and he was Strange 1 on the back of his jersey.
I like that. Okay. Too bad he was ordinary player.
We're going to take shit for not knowing who Erik Pappas is. He was a catcher. He went to high school at Mount Carmel.
Oh, boy.
And he was the 6th pick in the 1984 draft by the California Angels.
I'm not even lying. I am now vaguely. It's kind of vaguely familiar now, but just vaguely. That's all I'm gonna concede.
His big league career was not terribly extensive.
The fact that he was a local guy is not the reason. I wouldn't even have known that back then. But now it's something just sort of triggered. Maybe it's familiar. But yeah, 104
played
games.
7 games for the 91 Cubs. He played 82 games for the 93 Cardinals, and then 15 more in 94. For his career, he hit 242 with a homer and 35 RBIs.
Well, how about that, Erik Pappas? Neither of us remember you, but you get your airtime still. I remember this crap.
That was not a great.
Well, no, but that's not the year he was drafted, right? You jumped from the draft to the roster.
Drafted in 1984. It took him 7 years to make the big leagues.
Dallas Green.
So the 84 draft, the first overall pick was Sean Abner.
By the Mets.
Yep.
I think Maddox was drafted that year by the Cubs.
The Cubs' first-round pick was the 3rd overall. Do you remember who this was? Big, strapping, left-handed pitcher out of Morehead State, who did pitch for them. Not very much. Drew Hall. That apparently made a huge influence on Mike.
I think I cut out for a sec. Did you say the name? I thought it was Drew Hall. Yeah. He was an Olympian. They would tell us
just like Carl Lewis and Michael Jordan.
Well, right, Carl Lewis, Bulls draft pick. But do you remember collecting Topps cards in '85, and they had the U.S. Olympic set? So you'd have like Mark McGwire and Odie McDowell.
I remember Odie McDowell, absolutely.
Yeah. And Rod Dido, who was the longtime Southern Cal baseball coach, kind of a legend there. That was the manager. But supposedly Drew Hall was an Olympian on that '84 team. But I don't think he was good enough to get his Topps Olympic, because I didn't have one. Yeah. And but he was always sort of this alluring prospect. I did not know he was the first round pick, but he was sort of he was the third. I think only the third piece. The Cubs got 5 in the Mitch Williams trade, and when they dealt Palmeiro Moyer, and I think and Hall was the other one. Basically, they got the Canadian Steve Wilson who would have had a better career is what they got back. Yeah. Hall did get called up. He may have gotten called up for the Cubs briefly, but he pitched a little bit for Texas. But not one of Dallas Green's finest moments there as a first-round pick.
Other notables in the first round: Corey Snyder went 4th to the Indians. Erik Pappas 6th to the Angels. Jay Bell to the Twins with the 8th pick. Some hack named Mark McGwire 10th to the A's. Odie McDowell, 12th to the Rangers. I'm sure I wanted the Cubs to pick Odie because of his name. Terry Mulholland, 24th to the Giants.
Okay.
Norm Charlton was an Expo in the 28th pick. And let's see where Gregory Maddox got picked. He was the 31st overall pick.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Good pick.
And Jamie Moyer was picked in the 6th round. Jeff Pico in the 13th. So the Cubs nearly had 3/5 of their rotation for a decade. Maddox, Moyer, and Pico.
Those were probably the 3 best Dallas Green drafted pitchers, actually. Around. I mean, he also would have presumably drafted Lancaster. Hey, I just remembered something that happened in 1991 that is very relevant to events in the news today. And we can find this game in short order, but there is a game. I'd come home for college, and a handful of us. I was with my dad. We went with my dad, maybe one of my sisters. He'd gotten tickets. It was a weeknight game, and we sat in the bleachers, which again we would often do if there were a decent size, 3 or 4. It's always cheaper. We sat in right field. Early summer, May, June. They're playing the Reds. It was a beautiful night. It was one of those nights where you're in the bleachers and you kind of look out to the west and the sun's going down behind the left field, the third base grandstands, and you get that sort of unique orange glow. Just a beautiful summer night. But whatever, and we're gonna hone in on this in short order.
Was this the night Jack Armstrong outdueled Greg Maddox?
It was the night that the very much in the news Joe West, as long has been his, and you might be right. It may be in way for you to reference this game, but in an opportunity for good old Joe West to ingratiate himself into the affairs of the game, he became a central story.
All right, did you say this is a night game?
It was a night game. Okay. I'm scrolling. It was in the summer.
Right. So there's one so it wouldn't be that May series because it would have been July 23rd, 24th, or 25th.
Yes. And
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Probably might very well have all been day games. No way.
No.
Tuesday was a night game. Wednesday, so it's either a 12-3 Cub loss or a 5-4 walk-off win.
It was not a walk-off win.
No. Or
it was. No, I got it.
Oh, you found it.
I got it. It would have been Tuesday, July 23rd, when 34,458 folks filed in. So the box score, this is one of those ones where the box score.
Oh, yeah, you said it was a night game. That's the only night game in the series.
Yeah. Well, the box score is not going to probably tell you everything, but I can tell you when it happened. And of course, if you go to YouTube, you'll find this because we've all seen this now. in the last few years. I'm going to say too that friend of ours, Chuck Gittles, I know, and I didn't know Chuck at the time. I'd befriend him 12 years later. I know he was also in attendance at this game.
Oh, I know what this is. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the when would it have happened? Because there are a couple things that happened in this game. So this is really a game worth taking.
Well, yeah, the first thing or the second? The second thing would have happened relatively
early. Well, he got 4 at bats. Talking about Andre?
Yeah. The second part of this happened in the 8th inning.
Yes.
But
okay. Bottom of the 7th. Now it's not noted. All right, so let's just tell you what's going on here. If you go to the game on July 23rd, 1991, Wrigley Field, beautiful night, like I said, peak of the summer. We go to the bottom of the. So it was a tight game. No, not really. The Cubs are winning, but the Reds, by the way, just like the Pirates, were not only defending division champions, but they were defending world champions. They're struggling, though. Lou Pinella's team comes in with a 45 record. Cubs, with new manager Jim Essian, are come into this game 4 games under 500. So they're still hoping to gain relevance. They have the talent on the paper to go on a hot streak. So it's not, all is not lost, even though they've waved bye-bye to Don Zimmer. But in this game, with the Cubs leading by 3, in the bottom of the 7th against Norm Charlton, Ryan Sandberg pops out to lead off. Now, all you see in Baseball Reference is that Norm Charlton strikes out Andre Dawson on a 2-2 pitch looking. Okay? And that's all you see. But if you scroll down to the top of the 8th, you're going to see that Jerome Walton suddenly replaces
Right, that's
Andre
how you
Dawson.
have to know. You have to see when he got replaced.
That's right.
I'm surprised it
That's
doesn't show that a guy got ejected.
He got ejected, right, because there was a delay. Believe me, folks, if you don't know what we're talking about yet, there was a delay in this game. So Joe West, self-important sunflower, guy who needs the attention, rings up Dawson on a shitty call, because as much as we give Joe West shit for being a guy that needs to be the center of attention, he also deservedly gets shit historically for being a fucking shitty umpire. And he blew the call. And Dawson was not happy. And Dawson let West know it, and West ejected Dawson from the game, and Andre's anger surprisingly did not abate. It tended to escalate, started throwing. Well, first of all, even before he got ejected, this was pointed out once by Forklift. If you find the video, what you're going to see, and this kind of proved how ineffectual Jim Essian was that Dawson was losing his shit in the batter's box, and he's arguing, and you see George Bell in the on-deck circle kind of motioning, like looking over into the Cubs dugout, like, hey, Skip, you might want to go out and get your star player here before he gets tossed. Didn't matter. Dawson got tossed. Essian's arguing. While it's going on, Dawson goes into the dugout and just throws pretty much every bat that's in the dugout onto the field. And so, of course, we're in the bleachers. I don't think I threw anything on the field. We're like kind of center up right field. So it was just insane. Even from 400 feet away, we're watching, you can see the shit flying out of the dugout and the crowd's going wild. I'm pretty sure everybody in the first couple rows of the bleachers were throwing all the trash out there.
Hey,
outside.
No.
There we go.
Joe West makes the call. The Hawk says, hey, that's on the outside of the plate. I don't go that far on my holidays. Look what happens here. Now, he argues.
Look at him. He looks the same.
I mean, if you're going to dispute the called third strike, you get
about 80 pounds
right?
less.
No. Mr. West,
So he's arguing, right? Like,
what
what took Essian so long to get out there?
He was letting George Bell handle it.
He baited him all. Yes, absolutely. The baited umpire.
By the way, 91 was the penultimate season in which the Cubs didn't wear their names on their home uniforms.
The manager,
George Bell, the peacemaker.
There's Cub first baseman Luis Salazar taking Dawson off.
And after that,
good old number 41, Jim Essian, arguing with Joe West.
A little light tonight, and well, what the heck? I gotta blow a gasket. I know it's the back.
And needless to say, Dawson was a very composed player. This is not a character. So I'm exaggerating. Well, he didn't throw every bat out, but he's got a couple. He's made a couple tosses. He's going to a third one.
I did much better than that. Come here, I'll show you. So the ump goes over, and he goes,
look how.
Yeah, I would not want the Undertaker giving me that stare. Always going back for more bats.
Now watch these bats go. And you know what, at Wrigley Field, when you toss them that far, you get a free beer, right? Absolutely.
I don't know who the WGN guys are. But they were very much enjoying the highlights there.
Yeah, that's WGN. I didn't recognize any of those guys. So, and then otherwise, All right, so we're not done with this game. I was going to say, in an otherwise miserable or highly disappointing season, certainly it was a fun night at the ballpark if nothing else happened. Because the Cubs are already winning in this game, and for once they're playing well against a really good team. And then after Dawson's histrionics, the Cubs get out of the inning, and the game gets a little bit tighter when the Lacknaster ass maker combo gives back a run. So now close game. So we go to the bottom of the 8th. Cubs are clinging to a 1-run lead, and Luis Salazar leads off with a double. You can take it from here, Andy. He gets the double. Dunston, of course, because we're still in 1991.
Yes, Dunston bunts. And I'm sure he wasn't supposed to bunt to the pitcher, but he did. But it worked. And Sud Landrum had come in to pinch run for Luis Salazar. So the speedy Sud Landrum goes to third. Yep. That brings up Rick Wilkins, and he doubles.
And Wilkins had been called up. Wilkins was a true rookie that year. He'd just been called up a couple months ago because Damon Berryhill's health continued to fail. So Wilkins with a big insurance run.
Right. Now, Doug DeCenzo digs in against Dibble, and Dibble throws a wild pitch. So that moves Rick Wilkins, the speedy Rick Wilkins, to third base. And Doug DeCenzo decides his best chance of reaching against Rob Dibble is to bunt.
Which is a brilliant play in this situation. Doug DeCenzo's not going to get a hit off of Rob Dibble. And it's a 2-run game. It's going to put the game away, man. You're trying to win the game. So, yeah.
Squeezes on. The bunt is down. The run scores. And Dibble throws the ball away.
He didn't throw the ball away, Marty.
DeCenzo to second.
That is Marty, right?
It almost looked like Dibble was throwing the ball at DeCenzo.
I don't think it's
almost.
Marty.
Okay.
And Joe West has thrown Dibble out of the game.
Okay.
Wow.
So, yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen it, both of these will be linked in the on the post. But yeah, Dibble pissed off, and the bunt gets down, and the run's going to score, and so he throws the only accurate thing he threw all night. He managed to hit little Doug DeCenzo just below the butt, but threw the ball away, and DeCenzo ended up on second base. He got thrown out for intentionally throwing at a runner. This is not kickball. You can't hit the runner with the ball and then he's out.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Tag. Yeah, right. And I know that's not a appropriate term anymore, but yeah.
So, it's amazing that those two iconic moments happened within an inning of each other.
Right, late in the same game.
Not just in the same game. They happened within probably a half hour.
Well, it's funny when otherwise, when significant, memorable, and sort of iconic things happen in otherwise insignificant seasons. I mean, I don't know what's going to become of the 2021 Cubs, but we'll be talking about Javi's mad dash, for ages. And it was just a game against a shitty team in May.
The
81. Go ahead.
I was going to say the 2021 Cubs, due to their vast amount of injuries and some of the unheralded guys who have pitched in so far, and it's very early, has a little bit of a 1989 Cub stink to it, where all those guys had, the so many injuries and these other guys came in. The difference, of course, is that the young guys who came up, well, that's the big difference. They were young players who came up in 89.
89, yep.
These are old retreads from other teams that the Cubs are throwing it on. I don't think Patrick Wisdom is going to go down in history.
I think
Jerome
you might
Walton and Dwight Smith.
Right.
I really do.
You might have you've done this a couple episodes. You might have your 8 and your 9 transposed. And this team 89. Could be more reflective of the 98
I'm never going to
Cubs.
get that right. People are just going to have to learn to live with it.
So I have to share a personal anecdote because I had to remember to mark this if we came up with one of the following 3 seasons, 1988, 1991, and 1996, because just going to say that I've been to Wrigley Field probably over 300 times. When I was younger, I sat in the bleachers countless times. I would shag fly balls I've never caught a live ball in a game. It's my holy grail, but whatever. Gotten plenty in batting practice. So there are 2 ball players.
Tim Tuffle.
Tim Tuffle, good old number 11.
Tim Tuffle.
Platoon mate of Wally Backman. He was
literally, I have stopped even attempting to catch balls after that. I got one. That's all I need.
Yeah, no, right. Well, I've gotten several that get tossed up to me, and there are two ball players from opposing teams that both threw me a ball on two separate occasions several years apart. Okay, one of those is not Doug DeCenzo. Very similar to Doug DeCenzo. You might recall little John Cangelosi.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to save these stories for 88 and 96 because John Cangelosi throwing me a ball both involve a funny story. John Cangelosi first threw me a ball in 1988 and then 8 years later as a member of the Pirates, and then threw me a ball in the bleachers during batting practice in 1996 as a member of the Astros. The only other opposing player to throw me a ball two separate occasions was the first of those happened in 1991, and it was Mets left-hander Pete Shorrock, who in 1996, also 1996, the same year Cangelosi threw me a second. Shorrock, also with another team, very nice. Pete Shorrock threw me a ball as a member of the Cincinnati Reds. So I just wanted to, for the record, get that out there since 1991 came up. Pete Shorrock was a rookie for the Mets, but I happened to go to a Cubs-Mets game that summer, and that kid was kind enough to throw me a ball 5 years before he'd throw me another ball as a member of the Reds.
So I have I just showed Mike the Tim Tuffle ball that I caught. It is autographed by then president of the National League, not commissioner of baseball.
Commissioner was Bowie Kuhn. It's during the season. This is in 84?
This would have been 87.
Right, because 84, Backman's platoon mate was Kelvin Chapman, and they upgraded him with Tuffle. They upgraded him with Tuffle. Okay, so it would have been A. Bartlett Giamatti, yes. I'm guessing.
Paul Giamatti's dad.
Yep.
And you can actually see on the ball where Tim hit it. There's a little mark there, right? He took out the L in league.
So where were you sitting? Do you remember? Obviously, I'm sure you do.
Well, it was not really live. It was batting practice home run.
Okay.
And I caught it on the fly, and sitting in the left field bleachers. And at that moment, I think it was 87 or 8, so I was 14 or 15. I got one.
Did you catch it with your bare hands?
Yes.
Did you have a glove?
Got it. Caught it with my bare hands.
My hat to you.
Never need another one. My friend walked in. This is what happens.
Of course not.
I go with
I only want one.
It's my dad, my friend Danny, and me. We walk in. We're at the back end. We're at the back of the bleachers coming in. He looks up, and a ball is hitting the True Link fence, and he just grabs it. We walked in, and it landed like Andre Dawson had a batting practice home run to him. So then I was pissed. But then the Mets took batting practice, and little Timmy Tuffle hit one to me.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, impressive that you caught it. I think I've got pretty good hands. I play first base for 6 units, so I mean I can catch a lot of stuff. But in my younger years, twice in those times, I would say I was probably like 16 and 19 when this happened. I could have been older on the second time, where I was in the first row of the bleachers and a home run came right to me, bounced right off my hands. It hurt. It hurt more because I was embarrassed because I didn't catch it, and of course the ball bounced harmlessly on the field. So I tip my hat to you, Andy.
This is a quality Rawlings ball. It was made in Haiti.
Wow, when Baby Doc was president.
Wound by hand.
Where are they made now?
I don't know. Maybe still Haiti. I don't think so. I don't know if I have
Costa Rica, I thought.
I don't have a relatively new one. I have a Frontier League baseball. No,
but you've kept that one in good shape because you showed it to me.
Yeah, it's never done anything. It's never been played catch with. It's never been anything. It just went on a shelf. It's right next to the other ball that's right next to it is the ball. I pitched to one batter in the state tournament when I was 14. It struck him out, and it was the end of the inning. They threw the catcher threw the ball back to me, so I kept it.
Nice.
So
nice. Andy, I think we'd be remiss if we went an entire cast about 1991 and failed to mention that this was the one good season for the non-union non-union Hispanic counterpart to Barry Foote, Hector Villanueva.
Yes, of course.
He kind of burst onto the scene in an otherwise disappointing season.
He was onto the scene and out of his pants.
He was fat. He was fun. He hit a few dingers. He played catcher. He played a few positions. I think I mentioned when we brought up 92 that we made a road trip in from DeKalb, and he did not have a good year. But in order to send him some karma, I swore he was going to hit a home run while we were watching Bob Tewksbury duel off against Greg Maddox, and he did. And my friend Ron bought me a beer, and I was 21, so I felt very grown up. But Hector otherwise did not have a good season in 1992. However, I'm looking at it. I guess the thing that stands out is that he had an 87 OPS. He only went to the plate 214.
Wow, that's enough. So Hector Villanueva would translate roughly to Hector Newhouse if he were, a little more English than he actually was. So we had that. So Danny Jackson. Did I lose my Danny Jackson stats? I probably did. I wanted to go over the fact that, the big areas. So the big signing in 1991 was Danny Jackson, you said, coming off the World Series. But in 1990, Danny Jackson he made 21 starts. He only won 6 games for the Reds. But that would start a trend because he had an injury-plagued 91 with the Cubs. He went 1-5 in 14 starts. He went a whopping 4-9 for them in 92. He got traded to Pittsburgh, and he won 4 more games with the playoff-bound Pirates. And he got traded for... he got traded for Steve Buechele. All right.
We're still kind of alive mathematically in 91. Of course, I was just fooling myself.
Well, but what?
And that
there's no deficit too big that Steve Buechele can't bring.
Well, right. And so Steve Buechele was actually like a sought after third baseman at the trade deadline in 91, and Pittsburgh jumped on it. I remember I wanted that guy that I kind of heard of that had been in Texas for 5 years and didn't seem to suck. And he didn't really. I mean, Buechele is kind of the avatar of the 1990s Cubs as far as third base goes. I mean, we talk about that position being absolutely bereft of any consistency. He was clearly played more games at third than anybody else in our lifetime until Aramis. I'm gonna guess. Go out on a limb.
It could be. He had a very nice blonde mullet, curly hair.
Well, right, and he stayed with that team through 96, which was a lifetime for third baseman for the Cubs. But Jackson, he win a game at all that first season for the Cubs?
Won 1. He was 1-5 with a 6.75 ERA and 14 starts.
And as you mentioned, he didn't actually contribute to the Reds the year before as much as I had thought, but he was a really good pitcher, I think,
he did.
A few years before that.
So he pitched well in 2 games in the NLCS that year against the Pirates. He didn't get a decision, but he had a 2.38 ERA. His 1 World Series start did not go so well. Well, obviously the Reds won it because they swept the A's.
Okay.
He gave up 4 runs in 2 2/3. Basically, made a Trevor Williams start in the World Series.
And it was a start.
He started.
Was he on the 85 Royals?
Yes. He won 14 games for the 85 Royals. So he won 2 World Series. He won an 85 with the Royals and 90 with the Reds.
And then after the Cubs, he ended up resurfacing with the 93 Phillies. So he pitched in another World Series.
Yeah, he won 12 games for them. 93 Phillies. He actually pitched. So he pitched for Philly in 93 and 94. He won 26 games in those 2 years. He was an All-Star again in 94. He only made 2 All-Star teams. 88 with the Reds when he was really good. He was 23 and 8. He threw 15 complete games with 6 shutouts.
Wow.
260 innings, only gave up 206 hits, struck out 161, only walked 71. So he didn't strike out a lot of guys. He finished 2nd in the Cy Young, 9th in the MVP. Let's see, 90, what year was that? 80. Who won the Cy Young?
In 88?
Oh, well, it had to be Oral Hershiser. Yeah, it was, by a lot.
Yeah, but that's pretty impressive that Jackson won 23 games and didn't win the Cy Young.
Yeah. He didn't set the all-time record for scoreless innings.
Did Danny Jackson go to the playoffs with every team he pitched for except for the Cubs? Did he pitch for anybody besides the Royals? Because he would have gone to the playoffs.
Yeah, he finished up with he pitched from, did they make the playoffs? He would have pitched in the playoffs for the Cardinals, right, in 96?
No, yeah. The Cardinals reappeared in the playoffs in 96.
He pitched in the NLCS. They blew that. They were up. They had a 3-1 lead, and they
to the Braves.
And it's like, they're going to win, but they had to beat Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, and they couldn't beat him. So
it was beautiful, and I think they lost those 3 games by a combined. 2 of the games were like 12-1. It was like they lost those. The 3 games weren't even close. So
Oh, it's even better than that. So yeah, so they beat the Braves in Game 4, 4-3.
When Gaetti hit a big homer, I remember. He had
Take a 3-run lead.
Future
and
Cub.
then they have one more game. They have a game in St. Louis where they can win the pennant. And they lose. John Smoltz starts, and they lose 14-0. So then they go to Atlanta, and they have it's Alan Bennis against Greg Maddux. Maddux outduels him when they win 3-1, and so they can still win Game 7. And Tom Glavine beats Donovan Osborne 15-0.
Wow, 29-0 for 2 games.
Good. Fuck them.
That's satisfying. Yeah.
And remember, those were the days when that's all we had was other teams we didn't like being embarrassed in the playoffs.
It really was.
That's what we had.
It's like, 1991 fits that to a T. So, so who are you going to root for? I'm going to root for the Pirates over the Braves, right? You carry out your petty, differences and go from there. I mean, we're disappointed where the Cubs are now, but it's, we're not going to treat, even if this is not really the same team as 5 years ago, but it's still a different era, because they're still going to be there, and not in a way the 2005, 2009 Cubs are. I mean, maybe I'm talking out of my ass because it's only May. They could still. I mean, this team could actually, in some ways, going into the season, this Cubs team could have shaped up like the '91 team. And in fact, there's some talent, and it could really go sideways.
Still could.
You're right. It still can. It could be very similar. I don't know if Crane Kenny's going to fire David Ross like Don Granesco got rid of Zimmer, but
don't think that's going to happen.
It was not fun though. It was like kind of fun where I was 19. It was always fun to go to a game, and but like I said, it was the end of an era. After this season, that was when Tribune sort of got that bunker mentality to, they just sort of crafted things to not be so bold, maybe get lucky, so not try to be bad, but you might, but not try to really go. 1991 closed the chapter. That was the last time they went bold. Again, they signed those big 3 free agents. They did not make a top-tier free agent signing between 1991 and I want to say Alfonso. I mean, were the Cubs ever a player for a top free agent in those 16 seasons between 91 and 07?
Did Randy Myers count?
Well, yeah, that was a big one. Only they had such a gaping hole there by leaving Maddux go, and that's a good point. That's a good call, though. And Myers earned every penny of it when he saved 53 games. Yep. That's a good call. Yeah, I mean,
honestly, I can't think of anybody between him and Soriano. So it's one guy, and that was basically that was not unusual even for mediocre teams. The one thing you paid for on the market was we got to get a closer.
Yeah,
got to get a closer because we can't afford to lose these games in the ninth. So they overpay for guys, and that's how you end up, and they took all kinds of shots. Although Myers was the one guy they got who was still relatively close to his prime.
He was good. And he was really
because they were bringing in every year. They were bringing in the last gasp of Goose Gossage and Doug
1988.
Jones.
Yeah, 1996. Yeah,
it's just like,
that's right. Yeah, Gossage was 88 to bridge them between Smith and Mitch Williams, which was short-lived. They didn't really have, and then Dave Smith. I mean, for a team that, between Bruce Sutter and Lee Smith had that sort of part of the game locked down, not to mention all these young pitchers that went off to other places like Bill Caudle and Donnie Moore and Jay Howell that were closers elsewhere. And I'm missing one or two too, but it was it was the age of high-priced lousy closers.
Well, and it was a low risk. Well, I shouldn't say no. You could mitigate your risk because if you got a good closer and then your team sucked, that was a very marketable thing.
You could flip them.
Which is what the Cubs went into this season with Kimbrel. The idea was, well, maybe he'll pitch well, which he has. He's been great. And he's worth a lot. Unfortunately for their plan, as we sit here on, the 27th day of May, which is so really early, they're in first place.
Yep.
And, they're like, well, shit. But, there's a lot of time.
So, and Dave Smith proved to be washed up that he was part of the reason they suck, so they weren't flipping him that year.
No. So a quick look at the roster here to see what names pop out. But and we talked a little bit about, we figured out who Erik Pappas was. Talked about Doug Strange. Ced Landrum made a cameo.
Well, a repeat. Ced was brought up randomly in the past. So it's
we already talked about Cleotha Walker. He was 33.
I know. He sort of came on late. He was almost at the Bobby Scales of the late 80s, early 90s.
Pitching-wise, a name that jumps out is, of course, Laddie Renfro, who, if he was named anything but Laddie, you would not remember him.
The only reference that I will think of, there was a Sunday Night Baseball was a thing all the way back then, because I know I did not imagine. And by the way, I was completely off on opening day being on a Friday. I don't know why I thought that. It was on a Tuesday, but it was at home against the Cardinals. Dunston did homer, Jackson did start. But they played a Sunday night game in Busch. And this is the only reason that and it was in the summer, and they were probably out of it, although maybe faintly alive. I'm seeing it now. It's a walk-off loss on Sunday, July 7th. And I don't know why what Jim Essian did infuriated me, but I remember he sort of stopped the game in the ninth to bring Laddie Renfro in, or he started the inning with him. And that's what it was. He brought it. It was a tie game. The Cubs were leading, so this is why I'm frustrated. Again, I was delusional. At this point, I only had 12 years experience of being a fan. The Cubs are 38-44. This is actually 2 weeks before Joe West throws out Andre Dawson and Rob Dibble throws a ball at Doug DeCenzo. But they're 6 games under. Cardinals are 7 games over. It's a Sunday night game. So, whatever. They take the lead going into the bottom of the 12th. And I guess Jim Essian's own was Laddie Renfro.
No, this is even weirder than that. So you're close, except the Cubs had a 6-1 lead in the 8th.
Oh, that's what it is.
Les Lancaster came in, and he gave up a couple of runs. They bring Assenmacher in, and
another Lacknaster ass maker inning.
So and Felix Jose gets him again. He had a double off Lancaster to get it within 2. They bring Osmacher in to pitch to Craig Wilson with 2 on. He doubles. It scores future Cub Todd Zeal and Felix Jose. So now the lead is only 1. It's 6-5. But Osmacher gets the great Jose Oquendo, Tom Pagnazzi, and Jose. Oh, he gives a hit to Pagnazzi, doesn't hurt him. Gets Oquendo out. Lee Smith comes in for the Cardinals,
former Cub,
and he keeps it at 6-5. So Chuck McElroy is going to come in to get the save.
That's
it. He faces, he gives up a hit to Ray Langford. Milt Thompson bunts him to second because it's 1991 and everybody has to bunt. Ozzie Smith grounds out. The Cubs are 1 out away. And
one run victory.
Jim Essian goes to Laddie Renfro.
That's what it was. Thank you. I'm validated. He stops the game in the 9th inning for this Millhouse looking guy. Yep. I don't remember, he had glasses. I know and his name was fucking Laddie. And he looked like he was selling programs outside. With 2 outs in the 9th, yep. Jim Essian gets all cute.
Okay, so it's going to get weirder because he gets up a hit to Zeal. That moves.
Doesn't score the run, even though there's 2 outs, because it was an infield hit. Went in the hole.
Oh, okay. Things didn't go well. I gave the description wrong here for the Cardinals. Everything I said was right, but so Langford had led off with the single. Milt Thompson tried to bunt him to second, but didn't. They threw Langford out. So Milt was at first. Ozzie grounded out, but they forced Thompson at second. So there's still a runner. It's Ozzie's at first with 2 outs.
A runner has not reached second in the inning. Is contrary to what we originally thought.
So Chuck's doing okay. So you probably should leave him in, but he doesn't. Laddie comes in, gives up a single to Zeal. So now there's runners at first and second. Yep. Pedro Guerrero hits a single to tie the game. He gets Felix Jose out for the pop fly. Cubs don't score in the 10th. Renfro stays in, pitches the bottom of the 10th. And he faces, listen to these, Geronimo Pena, Tom Pagnazzi, and Rich Gedman, who must be 1,000 years old at this time.
He was a Red Sox, right? He's a left-handed hitting catcher for Boston.
Chris Carpenter, not that Chris Carpenter. This Chris Carpenter. Not the Chris Carpenter who was a postseason hero for the Cardinals. Not the Chris Carpenter that the Cubs traded for Theo Epstein. The other Chris Carpenter, the left-hander who punted at the University of Georgia.
Wow.
So he comes in. He comes in at the top of the 11th. He gets the Cubs 1-2-3. Laddie Renfro pitches the bottom of the 11th.
Okay.
And he gets Langford, Thompson, and Smith out 1, 2, 3.
So now I don't know how I feel because I don't know why he came in the first place. But
Okay.
then he
Well,
proved to be
listen,
pretty
this
effective.
is still going. Top of the 12th. Dunston singles, DeCenzo doubles, Dunston scores. Cubs take a 7-6 lead. Laddie bats for himself.
Were they out of pitchers?
He
They must
pops
have been.
out. Chico grounds out to shortstop. Bob McClure comes in to pitch. Mark Grace walks. Ryan Sandberg walks. So the bases are loaded. Walton grounds out. So they have a 1-run lead.
Really
Laddie comes out for the bottom of the 12th. He's now pitched. This is his third inning of work. Right? Third inning of work.
Third plus. I mean, if he finishes it.
Yeah, he's pitched 2 1/3 already.
Yep.
He gives up a double to Todd Zeal. Guerrero singles to tie the game. Laddie stays in. Felix Jose singles. They intentionally walk Geronimo Pena, and Tom Pagnazzi wins it with a single. So what the fuck was Jim Essian's obsession with Laddie Renfroe? He had to be the only pitcher they had left, right?
All the more reason why the hell would you go to that guy then with 2 outs in the 9th inning?
Yeah, bring your last guy in.
Unreal. Okay.
Yeah, okay, but this is weird. So if we back up a day, the Cubs won 12-2. 2 guys pitched. Bilecki and Slocum. Let's back up another day. Maybe 11 guys pitched in a game. They won 5-1 over the Cardinals. Frank Castillo pitched a complete game. They had used 3 pitchers in 2 games, and he had to just keep pitching Laddie Renfroe over and over and over again.
And even at that point, it doesn't matter if you go back to July 4th because now you've gone through 4 games, and you've used a total of, coming into this game, the Cubs had used 1 reliever in 3 days. And in this game, they only used Assmaker and McElroy.
For a combined, Les Lancaster started. He pitched. There were 2 outs in the 8th when he came out.
He hardly pitched.
Assemacher and McElroy only had to get 3 guys out. But Laddie Renfroe pitched 2 1/3 for some reason.
I know baseball was different in 1991, as evidenced by all these, sacrifice bunts. But for crying out loud, there were at least every team still had at least 10 pitchers in there.
That literally doesn't make any sense. No wonder that dipshit got fired.
Yes,
should have fired him during the game, not even after.
Yeah, so I'm no longer mad at the perspective.
No, this wasn't Laddie's fault.
He busted his ass. I mean, he should not have been in that situation. Again, probably didn't matter, but that's part of the reason they were in that position. They were, they came into that game 5 games under. They went 6 out.
Well, they just won
6
3
under
in a row.
after. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, they almost swept the series then because that was a Sunday night. Way to go, Jim.
Okay, so a few fun facts about Laddie Renfroe. He was a switch hitter.
Oh,
I don't know that did he ever bat?
Maybe that's why he batted. He batted in that game.
Yeah,
so
maybe he did.
Maybe that's why he batted for himself.
Of his big league career. That's the only at bat he ever got. He was a switch hitter. His name was Cohen Williams Renfroe.
Jesus,
Laddie.
Did he go to Exeter?
He was 29 years old when he made his big league debut, but he was a pick of the Cubs.
Oh,
so
what year?
He toiled in 1984. He was part of that
illustrious
pick. Yes. So he was the 25th round pick of the Cubs, who toiled in the minors for 7 years before he got his big break. And he pitched in 4 games, and the only decision he ever got was the one that July
forced 23rd. Upon him. When apparently some clown put down crazy glue on all of the bullpen seats, and nobody else could get up to come into the game. I mean, that team had Slocum. He was referred to before. Bob Scanlon with his straight as an arrow fastball. He could have pitched.
Can't make poor Laddie just keep.
Steve Wilson was still on the '91 Cubs. He may have been hurt, but just one of those seasons. It actually wasn't one of those. It was a little bit, like I said, few seasons had such high expectations that actually crashed like that. Because back in those days when the Cubs went to the playoffs, you didn't see it coming. 84, 89, 98. 89 maybe should have seen it coming, but 98, 89, 84. And then other seasons, other than like the hangover from 85 and 90 and 99 when you're, still are coming off the high of a playoff team, the 91 Cubs were not, but it was like a 1 year removed, and it was going into that season. It's like, all right, we're good. And it didn't work, and Tribune changed course, and, would wait a lot longer to get that feeling again.
Yep. But there they were, the 1991 Cubs. More than you ever wanted to know.
I would hope so.
About Laddie Renfro, Danny Jackson,
Hector Villanueva, Doug Strange,
Dave Smith.
Get them all. Sudlander.
It is nice, though, that Dave put his stamp on the Cubs so quickly.
Yeah.
Basically within the first 6 weeks. He crippled
Isn't
their
that
season.
funny? like I said, I just thought of it on the fly, but is he dead?
He's dead. He's been dead for quite a while.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He had a heart attack.
Wow. I wonder how many, his last season was 92. Jesus, yeah, he died in 2008.
Yeah, he's been dead for 13 years.
How many, do you think there are any other Cubs, 91 Cubs that are dead? Any that jump out?
I hope Laddie Renfro. Not poor Laddie. Laddie's 59 years old. Living it up in Natchez, Mississippi. He's fine.
After taking that, George Bell's still alive, right? He didn't have some weird.
Oh, yeah, she's probably still running the gas station. He probably has several gas stations.
So. Frank Castillo made his debut in 91.
Yeah, so we know he's dead.
Mona San, a good pitcher. It did well for them. He was part of the rotation on decent teams, but yeah, he's no longer with us.
Frank Castillo would have loved him on the current team. It's his kind of style, just flipping it up there, 88 miles an hour, and he really is. He's basically is Zach Davies.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we had the debut of Castillo and Wilkins were probably the rookies that that you'd remember from that team. But
a whole lot of all nothing. These guys are otherwise. I think all these guys are alive. Luis Salazar only has one eye though.
Right. We don't know about Yorkis Perez was mentioned before because we brought up was it the Berryhill trade?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Berryhill, your guy, was
still alive.
Was
he
traded
lives in Bajos
de
Jaina in the. I'm sure I said that perfectly. In the Dominican Republic, Yorkis is still
right. So,
good for Yorkis.
So 91 was the year the Cubs traded on the frustratingly injured Berryhill for like Turk Wendell, Yorkis Perez, handful of other players. Before we go, I appreciated when you had your Cubs cast with Kyle and Sam, and I never quite realized how the teams of this era just constantly were chasing the Braves, trying to do what they did, and instead getting all their cast-offs.
Yep.
Because you mentioned Yorkis Perez, but there's like Will Ullman and there's Joey Nate. I mean, their names that was like a remember this crap sort of interlude during your 2021 Cubs podcast. I appreciate it.
Micah Bowie, one of my favorites. And I brought up the famous line from Steve Stone, which was absolutely true. If the Braves call you and offer one of their young pitchers, hang up.
Yep.
Because they do not trade away the good ones. They don't. The closest time they ever came was Jason Schmidt, who was pretty good with the Pirates and then had a nice resurgence with the Giants. But he didn't fit in. He wasn't going to crack their rotation. They could easily afford to give him up.
Wainwright came up as a Brave too.
Yeah, but that would have been after that heyday. That was
because Glavine was already
gone.
for
JD Drew, right?
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, in a parallel universe, 91 was the first year that was the year that Braves franchise awakened, too. So, kind of interesting. So, Yorkis was the first of many.
And Stone's point was that it was easy to do this back then. Was John Schuerholz would and what's the other guy?
Ray?
The little guy with the high voice who was like their club president. I can't think of what his name is.
Stan Kasten?
Stan Kasten. They would talk to Peter Gammons about how great their young pitchers were, and Peter would write it. And Major League Scouting was so freaking sophisticated back then that just like the fans, a bunch of the front offices, including the Cubs, were reading that stuff, and they'd be like, ooh, this Joey Nation kid sounds like he's really good. And they would trade, and it was easy then. They would bring the guy up in trade rooms, and the GMs would be like, I heard of that guy. It's like, yeah, you heard about it because they told Peter Gammons to write it.
So they're saying sacrifice bunts weren't the only thing that were differentiated 1991 from today.
I mean, it was. I don't think there was. I mean, there was probably a time. It probably was the same time, like in the NFL. Maybe the NFL was a little bit ahead of it, and people caught up. But there was a time where if you were a savvy general manager in the NFL or in baseball, you had a huge advantage. A huge advantage. Mm-hmm. Because so many of these assholes were still like showing up for the baseball draft with like a Street and Smith college baseball preview. And they're just going through the all-American teams and they're like, okay, pick this guy. So somebody was telling a story on a podcast I was listening to about how unsophisticated the NFL draft used to be. And one team, no. This was the American Basketball Association. It was Terry Pluto wrote the book Loose Balls, which is a great book about the ABA. And he talked about the ABA draft and what a joke it could be year to year. And he said the team in Houston was going to send a normal contingent to the draft. And at the last minute, they're like, we really can't afford to do this. So the owner said, just give me the list of guys you want to pick. And I'll just go, and every round I'll just take the highest ranked one. And they're like, okay, fine, that'll work. So he goes, but for some reason, he got the list in alphabetical order. And they said if you look at the draft, he picked players in alphabetical order, not in order of best to worst. So he comes back with these guys, and the coach is like, what the fuck did you do to me?
He's like, wait, how do you sort in Excel?
Yeah. That's right. So that I can imagine like Dick Balderson during the Jim Fry era.
That's right.
Like cracking open the USA Today to look at this guy from Mississippi State looks good. It's like, he broke both of his legs in a car accident 6 weeks ago. He's a quick healer. Take him.
That's right.
That's what we got doctors for. It'll be fine.
Well, there you have it.
All right. So there it is. The 1991 Cubs.
Rest in peace.
Dave Smith, if nobody else.
That's right. Well, Dave Smith and
Frank Castillo. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Andy.
Many of us have herpes.